Morning. Welcome to RBKC's Subcommittee, Licensing, and thank you for attending. This hearing is being live streamed. I'm Councillor Janet Evans, and I will be chairing this meeting. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor David Lindsay and Councillor Abdullahi Noor and me. We are joined by Fiona Johnson, Councillor's licensing team. There she is, okay. Our legal officer, Lindsay Lemasurier. Also with us is our committee officer, Emily Beard. She is supported by Jerome Treherne. Before we start, just a few ground rules, please. Keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak, as only 2 microphones can be in use at any one time. And please make sure mobile phones are on silent. Thank you. The case before us today is to vary a license for Archer Street, 126 to 128 Notting Hill Gate. Now, for declarations of interest. I confirm that I have no declaration of interest to make regarding this item. Do the other members? Do you have any declarations?
I have no declaration of interest on this case.
Yep.
Likewise.
Thank you, colleagues. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of the meeting, which has already been circulated with the papers. First, the licensing officer, Ms. Johnson, will give a brief outline of the application. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Good morning, all present, Chair.
Good morning. Then I will ask applicant's legal advisor, Ms. Lana Tricker, to present her submission. She will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. She is joined by her clients, Ms. Siobhan McGill and Mr. Michael Bell, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Please, could you all confirm your attendance?
Confirm our attendance.
Thank you. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee and legal advisor of the applicant. Then questions may be asked by the objectors of the applicant. Next, the objectors. Councillor Joanna Gardner, Mr. Emra Tatar, thank you, and Ms. Jane Johnson. Thank you. They will present their objections. They will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes each to do so. Please, could you also confirm your attendance, which you have done, thank you. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee and the legal advisor of the objectors. Then questions may be asked by the applicant of the objectors. After this, we will ask our legal advisor, Ms. Lemasurier, to deal with any further questions that she may have. Please note that no draft conditions have been circulated for this hearing. However, if during the hearing the committee consider that further conditions may be necessary, then these will be discussed at this point. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Then finally, we will all turn to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up, and the meeting will end. I would like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers, which comprise the main pack, the 2 photos and videos from the objector, and the 1 PDF and 10 Word documents from the applicant that have been circulated to the parties. So there's no need to repeat their content, but please do draw our attention to certain points. Let's get going. Ms. Johnson, please can you outline the case and advise if there has been any additional documentation received?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Today's application has been submitted by the Stage Bar Group Limited for the variation of a premises licence in respect of Archer Street, 126 to 128 Notting Hill Gate, W11 3QG. The application was originally scheduled to be held on the 2nd of November 2023, but was adjourned on the request of the applicant. The premises currently operates as a cocktail bar, which benefits from a premises licence currently covering the ground and lower ground floor. A summary of the licensable activities currently permitted can be found on page 6 of today's main committee bundle. The premises itself currently benefits from a temporary extension of hours until 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays with a 1:30 a.m. closing, which was granted by the licensing subcommittee for a 1-year period in November last year. The temporary extension is due to expired on the 16th of November, and this application seeks to make it permanent. So to summarise, the application seeks to vary the licence to increase the permitted hours for the sale of alcohol, live music and late night refreshment on Friday and Saturday, increase opening hours and reinstate conditions to the premises licence. A full summary of the proposed hours and conditions can also be found on pages 6 and 7 of today's bundle. The licensing authority has received 16 representations in respect of this application, 14 in opposition and 2 in support. A summary of the representations opposing the application can be found on pages 8 and 9 of the main bundle, and copies of the full representations can be found at Appendix C. The contents of the 2 representations which have been submitted in support of the application have been summarised on page 10 of the report, and copies of the full representations can be found at Appendix D. Council records show that at the time this report was written, the premises had received 17 noise complaints over the preceding 24-month period. A table detailing the complaints can be found at Appendix E. In the past year, 6 temporary event notices have been submitted, and the list of these 10 can be found at Appendix F. There are no planning restrictions or conditions which the subcommittee should be aware of, and a copy of the planning officer's email is attached as Appendix G. As the chairman mentioned in her opening statement, there have been a number of additional documents which have been circulated after the dispatch of the main committee bundle. Other than those that the chairman referred to beforehand, I'm not aware of any additional documents. Thank you. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you. Now for the applicant's case, Ms. Tricker, please can you advise if there have been any amendments to your application?
No, Chair, no amendments to the applications. Could I just raise 2 points just from the licensing officer's summary? The premises is situated on the ground floor and first floor, not the lower ground floor that was mentioned. There's no trading on a lower ground floor.
Okay, thank you.
And secondly, there was a list of inspections which wasn't mentioned in the additional documents, so I'm just wondering that they have, confirming they have been circulated.
I think it was the 10th document, 10th Word document.
Yeah, we have a request that speak into the microphone, please. Thank you very much.
I shall move it. Thank you. So other than those 2 comments, I'm happy to proceed if you're
Thank
ready.
you. So you're saying that it was,
Yeah, we've got
it,
them. Yeah,
we have it.
Thank you very much.
Please can you now present your submission? You have up to 10 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. In attendance, just sitting beside me by way of background, is Siobhan McGill. She's an owner and director of this premises. She's been in the business for over 40 years and owns 3 premises in Soho and 1 in Clapham. None of these premises attract residential complaints or action by the authorities. And then we have Michael Bell sitting to my far left, who's the operations manager. As we've heard, this is a time-limited extension granted by members in November 22 for Friday and Saturday nights from midnight to 1 a.m. That has now lapsed by a few weeks due to the adjournment, but we have been trading on temporary event notices pending this hearing. This variation is to extend the permitted hours for late night refreshment, live music, and the on-sales of alcohol for 1 hour on Fridays and Saturdays, and to make the permission permanent. There's no change to off-sales. Off-sales are currently restricted to seated customers at the front of the premises, and there's no change to these hours. The variations have been explained, are sought, having regard to the viability of the business, the location, and of course, in paramount, having regard to the licensing objectives and the Council's statement of licensing policy. By way of how the premises trades as a restaurant bar with live performances by West End performers. A DJ plays backing tracks and the performers will sing to those tracks. Food is provided and a copy of the menu is attached in the papers along with a few photos. There's tables and chairs throughout the premises, and again you will see those to the photos in the pack. I think everyone will appreciate that the premises is a high-profile, high-end addition to the area, and the fit-out when it opened in February 22 was over £1 million. The history of the premises and the applications made set out in the applicant's submissions. I won't go through them in detail, we've read the history. Suffice to say that our position is that since my client has taken control of the premises, we've updated the licence conditions and with success to bring this licence voluntarily into the 21st century in that sense. We have up-to-date conditions. We've offered over 30 additional conditions to the licence to ensure that the licensing objectives are being upheld. That was a vast improvement to the previous licence, and they provide substantial protection to the nearby residents. My client has the utmost respect for conditions and compliance and promoting the licensing objectives. She knows the importance of working with neighbours and the authorities. Prior to the opening, she met with environmental health, engaged an acoustician, and liaised about noise escape. And this is shown by the lack of objection from environmental health to any aspect of any of the variations that the premises have submitted over the years. The members granted a trial period, and we say it's been a success. Even from reading a number of the representations submitted against this application, it is clear that some of the residents were unaware the premises had been trading for a year prior with the 1 a.m. extension on Fridays and Saturdays, and they set out their fears, which we appreciate. We have been trading, however, to 1 a.m, and these fears have not been realised, we say. Even the representation of Stephen Miller at page 51 of the bundle, we would say becomes a positive representation. He wasn't even aware that we were trading to 1 a.m, and he wasn't disturbed. I urge the members to read the context of the representation submitted in this regard. Now, helpful photos have been submitted in the supplementary pack showing the building and the location. In that photo, you see the first 2 floors, ground and first, are commercial, and then there's 4 floors above. Each flat is a duplex, so they run over 2 floors in Ivy Lodge. There's a floor in between the trading space of Archer Street, which is the ground floor, and the residence, which acts as a further buffer for noise control. Importantly, members do have the list of inspections by officers, no less than 9 proactive monitoring visits outside, and in fact that was much more because on certain nights they attended on more than 1 occasions. And members will have read this and their independent verification on all very positive about the outside operation. The last 2 pages of the council visits also detail complaints made and the way the venue has handled them. We invited the council down, encouraged the investigation of the complaints, provided CCTV, all of which showed the complaints were not substantiated by the evidence. It was even suggested by an officer that noise monitoring equipment be placed in a flat, and we supported that wholeheartedly. However, as we understand it, the council officer couldn't carry this out as they felt they were unable to verify the source of the noise and were not convinced that the internal noise was all coming from Archer Street. We do have an officer here who may be able to further provide information on this. Despite this, we did put additional noise stoppers on the bathroom doors, and this was done the day after the request was made. The applicant has been proactive with the council officers and discussions with them. They've been in touch with Mr Tata when there was emails sent offering to meet him, although this has never eventuated, with Mr Tata confirming an email that he was absent for the premises from his flat for months. We have residents above attending the premises. Ms McGill always sees them and always makes a beeline to them so she can ask if everything is okay, and responses have always been yes, no issues. Residents' meetings have been held. The last one was last Wednesday. In respect of one of the, Ms Adams, who's sitting here, attended the residents' meeting as well, and not one resident turned up. Just like the previous one, no one attended, and prior residents' meetings were in March and May, so they are engaging and trying to engage with the residents. Videos have been submitted, and I'm sure we'll see those. I won't go through them in any detail, although a different, other than another resident who was, when the videos were circulated, even commented by email to everyone that they showed the neighbourhood to be quiet. And we agree. We say the fears of the residents, even though we've been trading the later hours, have not been realised. We've submitted CCTV snapshots, and this is just a snapshot of what the impact outside the venue is in the later hours, rather than submitting, as I said in my submissions, hours of CCTV. And members will judge the videos, the CCTV snapshots and the council visits. There's not much for me to say on them, but we say that shows that in the later hours they have been managed successfully, and we have been a success with the temporary extension. The area has been described as residential, and of course there are residents. We don't say that there isn't, but around it is a busy area. The main road out the front is the A402, which sees a lot of traffic. There's 6 lanes of traffic there, both day and night bus routes. It's a busy commercial area. There's supermarkets adjacent, Tesco's and Marks and Spencer's, and a large pedestrian thoroughfare. Pavements are wide about 6.6 metres to accommodate this. The CCTV shows the number of buses constantly passing the premises in the night to accommodate the people, and hours of the other premises are in the surrounding area are helpfully set out in the report. Even the record of the council visits show that some complaints can be from people unrelated to the premises, as you've read. There are also concerns expressed by some residents that this will create a precedent. We all know that this application, should it be granted, will not make a precedent. We know all applications are dealt with on their merits and no precedents are created, and we say there's merits here. Dealing with the recorded music and live music for this application, we can provide the recorded music. We have it on an unrestricted basis, and so we're not seeking any changes there. But live music is the singing from the venue, and this is linked with the extension of hours. And the question then becomes whether there's going to be disturbance from it. And the licence already has a number of controls by way of conditions in terms of limiting the noise disturbance. We need the extension of the live music, otherwise it will destroy the concept of and operation of the business. Importantly, there's no EH or police representations to this variation or to prior ones, so no noise concerns from environmental health and no crime and disorder concerns from the police perspective either. No crime and disorder at venue in terms of drunkenness or antisocial behaviour. The conditions deal with the rear of the premises, where the main body of residents are in the back streets behind the venue, and there's no complaints about this. There is no activity. This was brought up in previous variations, and my client has managed it. She's understood these concerns from the outset and has eliminated this as a worry. There's minimum numbers of security on the licence. We've conditioned door staff at the front door from 9 p.m, and then on Friday and Saturday there's an additional security as well. There's CCTV covering the outside of the premises. We've shown snapshots for members. We've also implemented body cams for security outside. More as we've found lately, it's protection for the venue in terms of any complaints, and it's a busy area, as everyone will appreciate. The client does feel that the noise experienced by from the neighbours could not entirely be from the premises. It can also be from persons walking past the premises, having left other licensed venues. Groups unrelated to the venue do meet up, and the CCTV and body cams have been invaluable when investigating the complaints made. And as you'll see, from the first page of complaints in the pre-trial period, 19 of those complaints are from internal complaints which haven't been confirmed. They are from us, from officers, and we've dealt with those in any way from the stoppers. The last thing my client wants to do is to upset the residents, and you'll hear from her on this and her dispersal policy. She wants to be transparent, and I think hopefully officers will confirm that she has been. If there are any issues, she addresses them. If patrons are not respectful to the direction of security and management about dispersal, they're told they're not welcome back. Many residents are supportive of her and her operation, and there's 2 positive representations in the bundle which members will have read. Now, there's no specific complaints in the representations, with the exception of Mr. Tarter, but in terms of dates and times, they're very general, so this does not afford my client an ability to check the CCTV in relation to those complaints. But members will judge the videos for what they are, and the independent position of the council officer, having checked CCTV at the time, is in the papers, which again members will have regard to. Now, there's a smoking area out the front. It's not a social area. We're obliged to provide it, and we do monitor this. It's not seen by residents, given the overhang from the building above, and we've also limited numbers, 10 to midnight and then 5 persons after that. And we're looking for this condition to be reinstated should this application be granted. This is able to be monitored by staff and security, and it is. Smokers are not permitted to loiter near the premises or near the entrance to Ivy Lodge, which was a concern previously, and it's part of the smoking policy which members have. My clients know the building manager and has a good relationship with him, and so it doesn't happen. Now, the dispersal policy is in the additional papers. It was submitted with the original application, but it refers to the dispersal policy and the conditions. It is robust and thorough, we say. It's not generic, and it's a live document, so it does get looked at frequently and amended if need be. Dispersal, as already mentioned, it's nonetheless directed away from Victoria Gardens. We understand that fear, we do, but it's not a reason to refuse any application. There is signage about quiet dispersal as well. Actually leaving of the premises on dispersal, if people request taxis, the patrons will arrange the taxis via Uber or a black cab to deal with that, and we do our best to have those people remain within the venue, and that is also in our dispersal policy. Security can also get a taxi themselves for the patron.
I'm sorry, you're way over time. Can you wrap it up, please?
I can. On a practical level, just on dispersal, people are kept within the premises. There's double doors to deal with that. There is security on the inside and outside monitoring those doors, so we don't leave those to patrons either. There's the 2 reinstated conditions, which is the last entry time. We are looking to not attract people to the venue, but to keep them within the venue. And the CCTV snapshots also show that the full capacity is not there at closing.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully we'll address
Yeah.
the rest in questions.
Absolutely.
Now we'll have questions from the committee. Councillor Noor?
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, you said you had 2 meetings organized for the local residents. How those meetings had been advertised? How do you reach out to the resident to come to the meeting?
I'll speak, and then if there's anything additional. So a notice is put at the premises, and also it's by email to the residents' associations, and for people that we have the residents' direct email addresses, such as Mr. Tarte, we email that to them as well. Is that correct? Yes.
And Chair, I've got one more question. You mentioned you have a system in the building in terms of controlling noise, insulation. Can you explain a little bit more how that system ensures the noise does not reach the resident above you?
I might pass this to Siobhan in terms of the original building works. Prior to opening, there was a meeting with Environmental Health. They'd already had an acoustician in to look at the works, and there was substantial building works carried out. Are you able to expand on that, Siobhan?
Yes, we put in some soundproofing where we thought there might be escape going from the venue up through the building, and all those areas have been soundproofed.
And also in terms of the rear door, a lobby has been built so literally no noise can escape out the rear of the premises, and I actually don't think there's any complaints in relation to that. That is very secure. Importantly, what we have on the ground floor is the trading space, so the seating and the bar area there, and then upstairs is the cloakroom, which also assists in the slower dispersal because people have to go upstairs and then go to the front door, so it's not everyone piling out at the end of the evening, but also the bathrooms are upstairs as well, and the office space. So there's no trading space, it is entirely back of house upstairs on the first floor. Stoppers have also been placed on all the doors. I think there was an issue where it wasn't confirmed, but there was a possibility that the bathroom actual cubicle doors were hitting the rim when they were opened, and we've put closers on those as well. But there hasn't been any, obviously, representation from Environmental Health in terms of ongoing sound issues that have been verified.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I have no further question.
Okay. Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about the SIA presence you have and dispersals, and making sure that when people leave, they leave quietly?
So we have SIA registered security in place on Thursday, Friday and Saturdays, or whenever we deem it to be necessary. One positioned on the front door of the premises and one positioned inside, obviously controlling people within the venue. As people leave, we will ask them to book taxis and remain inside the venue until their taxi arrives. At dispersal time, or when people leave, we do ask them to verify as they leave that the taxi has arrived. And then once we understand the taxi is outside, we'll allow them to leave the premises to get straight into their taxis. If anyone requires a black taxi, we will flag it for them and wait for the black taxi to stop, and then ask people to leave to go into the taxis to eliminate the people on the outside. As people do leave, if they are waiting for public transport or going to the tube station, they're asked to keep their noise down as they disperse from the area, and we have security actively moving them and direct them towards the station or to the bus stops or wherever they need to get to.
And again, I'd just refer members to the independent council visits where they've been driving past and monitoring dispersal. It's always shown security to be visible, dealing with that, sweeping up cigarette butts and speaking to customers, etc. And they are obviously independent visits that have been carried out, not to the knowledge of the premises.
And different question, and I'm not sure who should answer this, but, and I don't want to go so deeply into your business plan, but what would the significance be of being able to continue as it is at the moment till 1 o'clock, or if you had to stop at midnight?
I think if I'll make a few comments and then Siobhan might have something to add, but certainly what we found, and that's why we applied for the variation for the trial period to deal with that, there were patrons that wanted to remain out, and we wanted to cater for them in a safe environment to deal with that. That in itself reduces noise and nuisance because you have people within a safe venue with security looking at all of that rather than leaving the venue and looking for further entertainment elsewhere, not within the control of the premises. So it has been invaluable to the client in terms of the later hours. And you'll see from the CCTV stills, it's not a case of everyone stays to 1 a.m. and then leaves the premises. It's very much a monitoring situation and people staying if they want to stay. It's been very invaluable in terms of the client satisfaction as well, to deal with that and being able to assist in the dispersal process in itself in a much better way, because everyone is not leaving at midnight to deal with that. It is spread out over a period of time and it's able to be managed by security and staff as well. Do you want to add anything more?
I don't have anything more to add, only as Lana said, I'll just confirm, a lot of the local people that use the bar have asked us and said, why don't you open till 1 o'clock before, and that's when we applied for it. And generally, I don't know why people like to be out till 1 o'clock, maybe because, I guess, in the area, would it be Portobello Road, it's all 1 o'clock. If not, they won't come to us. If we close earlier, they'll obviously all go down to Portobello Road where it's a later trade. And trade is bad enough as it is, but if it went back to 12, I think it would just be the end of it.
I wanted to ask, your main door onto Notting Hill Gate, is there one door going out, or is there a second door right behind it?
It's lobbied, so there's a door inside the premises and then a door on street level to deal with that. And what they do in terms of positioning is have a security on the outside and a security on the inside. So security will be there saying you're going to leave, fine, and then they can control so that both doors are not open at the same time. And I think that's been witnessed by the council officers to sometimes not trap is the wrong word for fire safety issues, but you keep them within that until the next door can be closed.
Excellent. Then I wanted to know, where is the main door to Ivy House? How far away is it from your club? Or perhaps they can answer it instead.
There's one building next to us, and it's directly after that. It's about, I guess, 10 meters to Ivy Lodge, but we've never had a problem. I know in the past they did, but we never see people, our patrons, outside Ivy Lodge.
And in addition to that, the smoking area is on the frontage of the premises, so it's on the other side, if that makes sense, of the front door. So Ivy Lodge's entrance is that way, then we have our front door, and then we have our smoking area further away from Ivy Lodge.
Right, and has Ivy Lodge come down, and any of the tenants, have they spoken to you or made a complaint or said turn down the music? Or
No, the only people that have come down are people, there's a couple that come and they drink in the bar.
They're customers.
As customers, but we've had nobody come to see us to make a complaint at all.
Thank you. Now, any questions from our legal advisor?
Just a couple. Can you explain, looking at the TENS applications, you put in for a couple of TENS to 1 a.m. on the 26th of November, 9th and 12th of December, but that was after your temporary extension was granted. Was that because you didn't physically have the licence in hand? Okay, thanks. That's what I thought. Thank you for that. Can you also tell me I know there's probably night buses, but if the premises closes at 1, what time, the tube station, what tube lines run and what time is their latest closing?
On Friday and Saturdays, the Central Line is 24 hours, so it runs all evening long. The District Line, the last tube, I believe, is about 12:20 on the Fridays and Saturday mornings.
Okay,
Most people will leave by taxi, and those that do go by tube, obviously the Central Line, which covers most of London, is 24 hours.
Okay, so up to 1 a.m. there's late night buses, taxis, Ubers, and the 24-hour Central Line in terms of public transport and customers' own cars. Thank you.
I actually find that quite helpful in terms of dispersal, and the clients mentioned this to me as well, because it also allows sort of the filtering out of people. If they have to catch the last tube, they shall do so, and then there's not a mass exodus at 1 a.m.
Any questions from the objectors? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to know two things. Did you mail drop Ivy Lodge? Because when I've spoken to Emma here, he didn't get any notification of the last meeting.
It was emailed through to you. Sorry, and also a sign in the window. I've got the email here,
Could I not,
if that assists.
could I not ask why you didn't think to mail drop Ivy Lodge, given that most of the objections or the comments have come from them?
From the email that I've seen, it was emailed through with Emma's detail, with his email address specifically on there, along with some other residents as well to deal with that.
Yes. Sorry, my question is still, did you not think to also mail drop the building?
Did you
Look-
send it? You sent it to the building manager, didn't you? By email. We're happy to do that in the future to deal with that.
I think it would be helpful in order that people are then aware of it, because not everybody has email.
I personally wrote to Emma asking him if there were any issues after we put the closers on the door, and asked if there were any problems. He did reply sometime later saying that he had been away for a couple of months. But I have the copy of the emails. The first time we did, yeah. Yeah.
So you held a residence operational meeting. That one I received via email. I replied via email, to which then you replied something. But if you're referring to the closers, I think you're referring to the door stoppers, which happened in July. After that, you did not write to me.
And the meeting you're talking about was the March meeting?
Yes.
September meeting.
Correct.
Sent an email saying I would ask licensing if we could get somebody to go in and put a
I did not
monitor
receive this email
in
either.
your apartment.
I did not receive this either.
Okay, you've replied to it.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, could I ask one other question? On the first floor, what is the flooring in and around up the stairs and on the flooring of the first floor, please?
It is wood flooring and altro in some of the areas going into the kitchen, and tiles in the bathroom. Yeah, but they've all been insulated underneath.
And the staircase up to the first floor, please?
That's wood also, with insulation underneath.
Thank you.
Now for the objector's case. Councillor Gardner, Mr. Tatar, and Mrs. Johnson, please can you present your submissions? And you each have 10 minutes to do so.
Hi, my name is Emrah Tatar. I live in Ivy Lodge, the residential block just above Archer Street. Our front door is one shop front away. My flat is the first floor of flats, so I'm probably the closest to the premises. And I have witnessed the noise coming from their patrons when they're in the street firsthand. I'd like to give you an idea of the noise and disturbance from my flat above Archer Street. Could you play video number 6, please? This is from 29th of July, 10 to 1 a.m. So this group had started chatting more loudly a few minutes earlier. The licensing enforcement officer had deemed the group not loud from CCTV, and yet, late at night, they were disturbing enough. Could you play videos number 9 and 10, please? These are from 21st of October, 10:02 and 1:15 a.m.
Martin, come on. Guys, Tammy, Joe and Joe Martin. I just got to get my shoes.
Someone cursing woke me up. Then the group being loud made me get up and record them in the first video. I couldn't sleep and recorded the other one. Could you play video number 3, please? This is from 19th of February, 1 a.m. This shows how supposedly people on the street who have nothing to do with the venue anymore actually came from the premises, and they need to be viewed in the same category as smokers in front of the venue, so double the noise. Could you play video number 2, please? This is from 18th of February, a few minutes before midnight. Permanently extended hours will make scenes like this ever more likely. The longer the wet bar is open, the busier the nightclub, and the less manageable people get. Over time, as the economy improves and we are forced to have our windows open due to hot weather for half a year, the venue's impact on us will be unbearable. Hot weather makes the venue busier. The videos, checked by officers, were taken from my flat, which is immediately above the premises. As you can see and hear, due to proximity, the noise from patrons can have a disproportionate impact on us residents above. And my videos miss the loudest noises, which make me up because invariably they are taken after the initial noise event. It is worse in summer when all our windows in Ivy Lodge are open. In 2022, for almost half a year in our concrete building, for instance. This additional hour to 1:30 a.m. in the past year resulted in 1. Increased comings and goings past our building entrance and under our windows. 2. Increased disturbing noise from tipsy drunk patrons under our windows. 3. Increased number of tipsy drunk people around our building entrance late at night, making it feel both less safe and prone to crime. 4. Cumulatively increased outside noise, including road traffic that used to fall away, has been pushed back by the extension. In many cases, they cause more noise too, as they are now picking up Archer Street customers later into the night when public transport options are less. Internal noise from patrons' footfalls disturbing even more late at night. I mean, they feel like herds migrating. All these in turn reduced the time we had available for sleep to extremes. Living on a busy high street with a service road behind that get noisy from 5:30 to 6 a.m. onwards, with glass recycling, trolleys, seagulls, and constant refurbishment work in this conservation area, etc., our tolerance for further reduced peace and quiet is extremely low, and we have suffered this past year accordingly. The applicant used the adjournment period to submit still CCTV images. As you can imagine, we've had many more instances of being disturbed by their patrons throughout the year. Noise from patrons is in an instant, intermittent, and due to proximity, their effect is immediate. You would have thought that after so many complaints during temporarily extended hours, they'd put all the stops to manage their patrons a couple of weeks prior to the hearing, for instance. But they couldn't, as the videos from 21st of October demonstrate. Due to proximity to our flats to venue's patrons, the objective of being effective at keeping people quiet outside is not realistic, and I'm not sure it belongs to a license. Our building is concrete, and sadly the noise carries effectively, and window quality doesn't help either, I'm afraid. For 60 years, since our building's completion, the latest licensing hours got to was 11 p.m. for these premises. This was sensible. This changed in 2022 with twice extended licensing hours when this venue opened. As a result, outside noise, i.e. traffic, people, etc., that used to fall away after 11 p.m. with the previous tenant has now been pushed back by this venue's twice extended hours, and it is louder throughout. No matter how noisy it has been outside though, all that goes away when this venue closes for the night, and Mondays are a bliss. Please let these extensions to be pandemic-era generosities and not to be repeated here today. If the council's midnight policy is abandoned in this residential section of the street, this will set in motion a chain of applications for ever slightly longer opening times by an ever-growing number of venues, each making multiple applications in a year, and all represented by their solicitors, financed at our expense, while residents are forced to deal with each of them by having to create the time and effort themselves. This nightclub is in the wrong location, being beneath and near 3 residential blocks, and with all the premises around it closing it by midnight. Had it only been opened up the road, near the tube station, they could have obtained the later opening hours they want from the get-go, where there is more nighttime economy and there aren't the same number of living and bedrooms above and across. Furthermore, our residential building's entrances between the venue and Tesco, where the venue channels its tipsy drunk patrons under the canopy, away from our flats to manage disturbance. This does not feel safe. The challenge of this application is, how late is reasonable for our sleep to be disturbed? I say midnight and no later, for the sake of me and my neighbor's sleep and sanity. I appreciate the permissive nature of the 2003 Licensing Act, but it doesn't speak against sensible implementation. Based on my experience of the past 18 months, Reversing permanent hours to 11 p.m. and granting a temporary extension to midnight would provide the right incentive to the venue to be a good neighbor instead, while ensuring adherence to free market principles. Please see my written submission for details. Further, I'm desperate for your protection on internal noise and vibration. If these are not fully restricted on the license, I'll suffer severe blows to my mental and financial health. You are my last hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. The truth is, this past year has been, for residents, particularly those living in Ivy Lodge, immediately above Archer Street, death by 1,000 cuts, due to the noise from the patrons leaving the premises, whether to smoke or to head home in the early hours of the morning. The venue has a capacity of 200. Whether they come out in one go, or worse still, in groups of 2 to 5 or even 10, if they've had a good evening, they're likely to be happy, merry even, and loud. The issue before you today is what time is it reasonable for residents living above the premises to be allowed to go to sleep? Such is the impact of Archer Street clientele on the noise of the area. What you have here is a request for a staggered closing time, when all in this strip of Notting Hill Gate close at midnight, if not before. And as paragraph 8.3 of the Council's licensing policy says, quotes, staggering closing hours of licensed premises throughout the night, rather than reducing any adverse effects on residents, may in fact disturb them continuously. You will see in the pack many comments from residents talking about the bass music keeping them awake in bed. Josephine Fontaine, page 41, Will Whittington, page 43, Patrick Elphiston, page 48, Stephen Hicks, page 40, and Emra, page 52. I've also had other emails in my councillor inbox. Camden Hill Towers talks about, quote, already created late night noise, and separately a stealth approach by the applicant in applying increments to wear the neighbours down. I'm sorry Josephine Fontaine couldn't join you today, as she's working, but her objection is very clear. When she's lying in bed, she can hear the bass noise. I went past a few Saturdays ago, just after midnight, to see for myself, and I was stunned that even in my stroll past, I heard heavy music at least twice, presumably as the inner door and the outer door were both open at the same time. The noise escape was marked. The premises was packed with guests, many of them dancing. Outside, there were two groups, a huddle on the left of 4 and on the right 5. None were under the canopy, and nor did they leave as I went past. I think some were smokers, and the door supervisor did pop over to one group talking loudly, putting up his finger in a shush mode, and the lady just laughed loudly. In fact, she giggled. But of course, they'd already made their noise, and possibly did so again after I passed. I know the applicant has sent you copious CCTV skills, each 10 minutes apart, during which a lot can happen, and even drip feeding 5 to 10 patrons onto the pavement. Say, 5 smokers who inevitably stand out and chat, sometimes to the door supervisor. It's clear in the CCTV. And more leaving, you suddenly increase the noise of another otherwise quiet road. Just look at the road behind in the CCTV images after midnight, and it's virtually empty of traffic, except for Ubers stopping to collect Archer Street patrons or the occasional bus. You'll even see in Emra's videos the difference between his midnight video and the 1 a.m. video. The traffic change is substantial, as is the noise in the area. This end of Notting Hill Gate is shut by midnight. It's a sleepy ghost town. Even McDonald's shuts then, so allowing one premises, Archer Street, to stay open until 1:30 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights is, as one resident aptly says in the pack, a cuckoo in the heart of this normally quiet evening location. It says to residents living above or nearby, forget trying to sleep till 1:45 a.m, as you'll just be woken by patrons leaving in dribs and drabs or music from open doors. When I looked at the noise nuisance reports and the officers visited, I genuinely found myself wondering why the disconnect with residents. Yet when I visited, I realised it's because the noise is intermittent. It can depend on the night itself, the patrons, who, how merry, and when they leave, if they're part of a group or a couple, if both doors are open together, and dare I say it, sometimes a lack of perceived success by our noise nuisance officers. As councillors, we know the delay between logging a complaint and case officers calling us back or visiting. The noise disturbance from Archer Street is transient. It comes and goes. And by the time an officer's visit is gone again, it's gone again. And eventually, when residents feel that nothing's happened, they stop reporting it, as if they've lost faith. Instead, their faith rests with you today as to whether you allow their sleep to continue to be disturbed after midnight. We have a midnight policy so as to avoid death by 1,000 cuts, and in this case, after a sleepless year for residents, I ask, on their behalf, that you refuse this 1:30 a.m. extension. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Johnson, I understand you're not speaking.
Miss Adams.
Who?
Melanie Adams, not Miss Johnson.
No, I'm talking about this, the objector's case.
Oh, sorry, Miss Johnson.
Yes,
sorry,
Miss
beg-
Johnson.
Sorry, beg your pardon. I was thinking of Fiona, sorry.
Now we'll have questions from the committee. Councillor Lindsay, any questions?
Councillor Gardner, you are known for being an assiduous ward councillor. How many emails about this have you actually received?
I was looking through them the other day, and I think it's about 15 or 16.
And where were they all from? Around about, or were most of them actually from the building itself?
Most of them were from Ivy Lodge. There was a batch also from Camden Hill Towers.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
there was one from Dr. Johnson who lives in neither.
But she's here, so yes, so she gets a double whammy, as it were, or we get a double whammy from you, Miss Johnson. Thank you.
Councillor Noor?
Thank you, Chair. I think my question is, I mean, you have presented, the record of videos and the issue of noise. Have you yourself, any occasion, tried to speak or present these issues to the operator of the building?
My faith was actually quite disturbed after last year's hearing, because prior to that, all of a sudden I realized, okay, there was this extension to 1 a.m., which I thought came out of nowhere, and I was then told I should have had submitted complaints because summer of 2022 was horrible. And then I submitted my complaint to Environmental Health in September, just to say what it is. This is what happened, how the summer was. And the venue was also very dismissive. At the hearing, the venue was dismissive. Just a week or 2 weeks before that hearing, 17th of November, I contacted the venue to complain about the internal noise, because during summer, because it was so loud, I couldn't figure out where all that noise was coming from. Afterwards, also simply spending time and listening to it, the door closing and footfall noise, I figured that was coming from them. So they came up, so Michael came up on 29th of October, and then I haven't heard anything afterwards. And then on 17th of November hearing, I repeated my complaint saying, in addition to all the outside noise, which was a little worse than what you've seen here, by the way, I also have this internal noise, which is very extremely disturbing. And afterwards, I haven't heard anything. And then I haven't complained throughout December because I actually wanted to give them the time, the extra time, so that they would make the extra money in case they need it to address the internal sound issue. Nothing. And the internal sound, by the way, so there was this mentioned acoustics test in October 2021. Even though I was isolating, I invited the tester in, and it was conducted in my flat, and it failed by a very wide margin. On the back of which, same evening, Ms. McGill and Michael came up, introduced themselves, and she told me that I needn't worry and I wouldn't hear anything. But then afterwards I found out, actually, on the first floor, they opted for 0 sound insulation. And I think the only way, I guess, they would have done it is because in the sound acoustics report, even though I had asked for it, I haven't received a copy of it. As in back in October 2021, before inviting, I said, would you be sharing the report with us? I think my flat was deemed not critical for this purpose, so I was, I think, conveniently left out. And I understand during the refurbishment, actually, our resident team member who lives in Campton Towers, next door, he actually saw that the stairs were being covered with hard materials. And he just commented, oh, the previous tenants made sure that it was covered with some sound insulating like carpet or something, because you shouldn't have it like this. So this was also ignored. And yeah, that's the reason. I mean, it's easy to lose faith because I'm the one getting disturbed. All onus is on a very strange way on me. Like, and life continues for everyone else as usual, and I just keep getting disturbed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Could I just respond? We have been here before in terms of this hearing last year, and actually what became very evident from that hearing last year was that if complaints arose, you direct people to the noise nuisance team for the very reason that that was what was lacking in last year's evidence at the hearing. So in terms of engagement, I think that is probably why it's gone that route rather than people sitting down with the with the applicant, because it mattered a year later when this hearing came up.
Am I able to just respond just to what Mr. Tata said?
We'll give you latitude, yes.
Thank you. Just in relation to comments in terms of not having heard from the venue, you're correct. Siobhan and Michael did go up to the premises, and Michael went up separately and did provide number, email address and all of that, and said, please call me if you're disturbed again, and I'll come up and we will sort this out to deal with it all, and hasn't heard further in respect of that. In relation to other complaints being made to the noise team, my understanding, and correct me, Melanie might be able to correct me, is that when complaints have been received, the officer has always come to the venue, notified the venue of what the complaints were, checked the CCTV, and you'll see in the list of visits in terms of, well, we've checked the CCTV, there was no one there, possible it could be from someone else in the premises. So the venue has been responsive and has been notified of the complaints, but nothing's been substantiated as having been caused by the venue to deal with that. There was also acoustic works done on the first floor. It was part of the report. That acoustic report was shared with Keith Mahaffey, Environmental Health, prior to the works being carried out, and he was very satisfied with the works being carried out. And we haven't been notified of any major issues to deal with that. They're of course willing to work with whoever needs to work with, but there has been responses and positive, going through the CCTV and etc. in terms of complaints that have been made. And just one comment in terms of Councillor Gardner's comments in terms of her objections, in terms of bass noise etc. We haven't been notified by any other residents that there's been concern in relation to any bass noise in the premises. No residents have approached us or told us, and none of those issues in terms of bass were raised in relation to the prior variation hearing moving forward.
Thank you. I have been reading all of these objections, and I think we have to be fact-based. And I noticed, Councillor Gardner, that you were worried about pickpockets and petty crime. Do you have any proof of this, that it's happened, or you're just anticipating?
I mean, I think we know that Portobello Road is a hotspot on weekends, and where you tend to get crowds, you will often get petty criminals around it. So I don't have any direct evidence. I can't see with a lot of... so I don't think it's a police priority, correct, in the area.
Thank you, because you mentioned it in your objection, so we were concerned about that. And you and another objector live on Balmer Mews, is that correct?
Correct. I objected in my capacity as ward councillor.
I see.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't understand how the noise would reach you, so now thank you for clarifying.
I think I did try to make it clear at the beginning that the reason I was objecting was by virtue of my councillor inbox.
Right, but there was your neighbour as well, so...
You can ask her. There's another neighbour who lives in Victoria Gardens.
Yes. Do you have any examples of the noise reaching you behind?
No, my objection is not on the grounds of noise, affecting us in Bulmer Mews. My concerns are that if the midnight policy is breached, it increases the footfall on Notting Hill Gate, and also the incidences of antisocial behaviour. We in the Mews have a long-standing history of people using the Mews as a quiet place to urinate and all sorts of other things. The next question will undoubtedly be, can you prove that these are people who have come from whatever premises it may be?
Exactly, because that's why we're here.
And the answer is no, we can't, but the more premises you have in the area that are open beyond midnight, the more these things are going to occur, and they do.
Thank you very much. My next question I will leave it to our solicitor, actually.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. What was I going to ask? Mr. Tatter, have the internal noise issues been resolved now? I know there's external noise issues, but have the internal noise issues been resolved?
So the internal noise from banging doors have been resolved after the licensing enforcement officer's involvement. That was first in July, and then I think it was August with the doorstop. The footfall noise, I think it lessened in April time, but it still persists. And the one mentioned with like herds, it's just like it feels like you're hearing herds migrating. For instance, I think it was probably the 21st of October, for instance, the crowds you saw there.
Are you talking about external noise now? I'm just asking about the internal noise.
For instance, the crowds you saw outside, so when they were inside moving, it was again that loud. So the footfall noise continues.
Continues,
yes.
So internal, let me make a note of that. And that's people going up the stairs and onto the first floor you're talking about?
I don't know the reason. So licensing enforcement was, the licensing enforcement officer wanted to come by and actually experience it herself as well with a colleague, but then they couldn't manage it to experience it live. So we did a test at 6 p.m. She came with a colleague, and when we were upstairs, so she actually did hear it, and she did say, it was only one person, and she did say, oh, I can see how this can be very nerving. Very
When
disturbing.
was this? When was this visit?
That was in July, 21st of July.
So July 23, a licensing officer came into your flat to listen to internal noise issues.
Yes.
which you're saying are still ongoing. Sorry, what was resolved in July and August? Was that the stoppers? And you said something
Correct,
about
the stoppers. So there were two issues. One, the banging doors, and
Yep.
two, this footstep sounds, as were describing it. But during our test, we actually confirmed it was actual footfall noise. So her colleague came down the stairs, and those clocking of, so to say, shoes, that also explained why during summer there were a lot less footfall noise, because women are wearing rubber soles.
okay.
Or less coats, exactly. People don't go up and
So
down.
what have they done to stop that noise in relation to the footfall?
I don't know.
So, but it stopped.
No, they continue. That's what I mean. In
Okay.
October, for instance, it was still like herds migrating.
So what, sorry, just to I'm clear, so what has been resolved is the
banging
the banging
doors.
of the doors,
Yeah.
but there's still internal footfall noise issues.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify. Why, not just you, but why has no one attended the residents' meetings? The applicant is saying that no one's attended the residents' meeting. I understand that you wanted to channel your complaints via noise and nuisance.
No, as I said, I became aware of the March residents meeting.
March this year.
Yes, March this year. That
Yeah.
was the first one since the hearing on 17th of November. I sent an email. If you want, I have it here. I sent an email, and my complaints are consistent with last year's hearing.
Did you attend the meeting though, the March residents' meeting?
I sent it, no.
But you sent an email instead?
Correct. These are my complaints. And I'm not aware of the second meeting, as we have just discussed.
Sorry, did you say that, when were the residents' meetings held? March 23, May 23 and November 23. And can you tell me,
There was also offers to hold it online as well, you know, if someone can't attend, and that's easier for them to attend for that. And Michael emailed Mr. Tata directly, along with a couple of other people as well, in terms of the request of attending the residents' meeting.
okay, thank you. Sorry, and back to, Councillor Gardner?
In terms of, I have gone to, I think, 2 of the meetings. They're always poorly attended.
Which ones have you gone to? Do you know which months?
So this November one, I have to admit, I didn't attend on the basis that there was this hearing.
Yep.
The previous one was
May 23.
Yes, that was the busiest time of year. So, and also I think it came out at very short notice. I thought I attended.
Did you go to
sorry,
the March one?
I could search my diary and tell you which
So I
ones
think
I
the
attended.
previous, so you couldn't, November you didn't come to because of this hearing.
Yeah.
May you were busy.
I
and then
think
the
I
previous one
attended
was March.
the March one. I
March,
think.
okay. So you did go to March.
But to be honest, I'd have to have a look. It's literally, I've been there, and there've been 2 people from Pembridge Square, which is miles away.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know what the invite list is. I know the Pembridge Association has reached out to me and said, "Am I going?" And I said, "I'm not free." But I don't know where the invite list came from, and whether, in fact, it actually gets Gate Hill Court, Camden Hill Towers, or Ivy Lodge.
But you were aware that there was a March meeting. Sorry, I'm just trying to
So
get clear.
I would have to have a look at my diary.
Okay.
Sorry, there was no attendees at the March meeting.
Okay. But you have attended
Apart
a
from
meeting at some point in time.
Apart from Melanie.
Yeah.
Can the applicant perhaps say when the objectors have attended any of the meetings?
I think there was one resident that attended.
When?
Oh, sorry, in March. I stand corrected. There was one resident that attended in March from Victoria Gardens, and Melanie as well.
Melanie from licensing?
Yes, Melanie
Okay.
Adams. In May, no one attended, and in this one, no one attended. And we did get some emails back from some residents' associations saying I've distributed it to members.
But did you get any direct complaints back as a result of that?
No, nothing.
All right, so March 23, one resident from Victoria Gardens, Melanie from licensing. May and November 23, May and November, no attendees.
Yes, and
Okay.
November, Melanie came.
Yeah.
Yes.
You came in November as well, Melanie? Okay. And Melanie, okay. Okay, so that's good to know. what else do I want to know? I note that you're saying that most of the premises along that strip and in that area, they stop alcohol sales at midnight. I know the cinema's open till 3 and it's got late night refreshment till 3, but it hasn't got alcohol till 3. Do you get any, are you affected by the cinema at all, or any other premises? I mean, I'm just trying to think of premises that are open later.
No, so the cinema is also towards the tube station, and that's actually what I meant with had the venue opened just up the road, i.e. where there is residential flats.
Okay. So you're not. So it's you're saying that you're affected directly by these premises, and I think what the committee want to be clear on. Obviously, this relates to the hours between midnight and 1 o'clock. You've definitely noticed an impact between those hours during that trial period.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, fine.
And I mean, it's also not just based on. I mean, I've been living there for almost 12 years now, so I have a pretty clear experience.
So obviously, in terms of the impact between 12 and 1, so it's lessening your sleep, it's affecting your mental health. Can you bullet point any other issues that you've raised? Just.
Well, how should I put it? I mean, for instance, the videos, they don't actually. I mean, you can't even capture the, so to say, the real disturbance. It's the cumulative effect. Like between 12 and 1, when there wasn't sort of, if the noise was, let's say, 10, it's now all of a sudden 30, 40, 50, 60 sometimes. And because we live on a high street anyway, because it wears you down during the day, any additional bit actually feels a lot heavier on you. So it's not as if, oh, it's just this 1 hour, because 1 hour in itself is not a lot, of course.
Yeah.
But on top of the full day is a lot.
Adds on. And one final question, as the applicant has pointed out, a lot of the objections, not all the objections, and certainly not your objection, and there's one other, but I can't remember without looking at the pack, a lot of the objections are talking about it as if it's a proposed application. They're not saying that it comes across as though they're not aware that there has been this 1 year trial period.
Well,
I mean, what do you say about? I know you're directly affected.
Yeah,
but
no. I totally. How should I put it? Again, because of my experience of last year's hearing and having understood what you require, what you need to see, so to say, I have become even more hawkish to be able to articulate myself and also, so to say, show. But if you're living a little further away, or you wouldn't know because of the canopy provides a protection. I put in my submission, for instance, how now that the venue channels the guests, their patrons, under the canopy towards Tesco, I can no longer, for instance, record them.
Yeah.
So if you are someone, you notice, that's what I mean with, you actually notice the cumulative outside noise. You just know there is more noise now. You wouldn't necessarily be able to pinpoint if you're a little further away, but I am. As in, because I've been disturbed most.
Okay. And perhaps that question to Councillor Gardner, because obviously you have given evidence of direct impact. Councillor Gardner, are your residents and complainants talking about that 12 to 1 hour period? Were they aware of obviously the trial run?
So, Stephen Miller, by the way, the sort of semi-supportive applicant, he's actually got his flat on the market for sale. So his comments that he's not been disturbed. He is also right at the top of the block.
Ivy Lodge, is he?
Yes, okay. Correct. So in terms of one that says, "Oh, I wasn't aware of it," I think that's slightly disingenuous. But in terms of other objections, what you have, and it was one of the challenges we had at last year's hearing, was that if you look out the window of Ivy Lodge, because of that canopy, you can't tell that it's actually a bunch of smokers standing outside underneath the canopy, or it's somebody talking to the door supervisor. I think as Emma has said, what happens is that you know there has been an increase outside the premises. You know you have been disturbed by something. Are you going to get out of your pajamas, go down in the lift, look outside, go over to the person and say, "Have you just come from the Archer Street?" Because the reality is that most people, and I've had it happen in my own house when my neighbours have had parties till 6 a.m, you're not really going to go out and ask the person who's peeing on the wall, where did they come from? So it's actually what is realistic to expect of residents.
Okay. But are most of your residents aware that there was this trial period? Because obviously some of it reads as though they're talking about this is the first time it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, some of those residents, first time I've heard from them, and I would say that I think it's like TENS. People don't tend to know that TENS is happening. Unless you're physically outside your property and you're looking at the hours, you don't know that that increase has come from there. So are they specifically saying to me, oh yeah, we know the property's already got a 1 o'clock licence? No. Or 1:30 in truth, by the time it's empty.
Thank you. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Any further question?
Yes. Emery, you said you said 5 minutes ago that you'd lived in Archer Street for, sorry, just in the
Ivy Lodge.
in Ivy Lodge for the last 10 or was it 12 years? I'm not going to quibble about 6 months. How does the noise now compare with the whole of that period? Is it louder? Is it more frequent? And the disturbances that you showed the videos of.
Yes, it is louder. So overall outside noise is louder. On top of that, because so when people come out, I put it in my written submission, for instance, people just make noise. Some sing, some, I don't know, for instance, 2 guys come out, you can literally hear them, and they, I don't know, maybe they're rugby players, like they say something, and it's just extremely loud. So, of course, before like 2022, we didn't have any of this. And internal noise, again, this happened after the refurbishment. Prior to that, we had none of it. And that for 10 years.
Did Proper use the first floor?
Yeah. So the refurbishment caused the internal noise that wasn't there before. And because it's later, for instance, the internal noise again, at 1 a.m., when you hear something coming through your walls, I mean, it does impact you. I mean, it disturbs your sleep, it reduces the quality of it, even when you're not doing anything, for instance, just on your phone or trying to work or think, it's unsettling. It's just a weird thing.
Well, Councillor Lindsay would like to ask you to comment on that, and I will allow it.
You've just heard, I mean, basically, you've just heard what Mr. Tata has said, but I'd like your comments from your perspective on what he said.
Absolutely, and I can pass to my client because she's there firsthand as well. But I do believe at the last variation hearing, when the time-limited licence was granted, Mr. Tata was asked the question about whether or not the impact was louder, and the answer was no, because when it was Polpo, he could hear the knives and forks and, that like outside the premises. To deal with that, in terms of the comments that the canopy restricts the view, so they don't know where it's from, it's very easily, as has been demonstrated, is that you can record that with environmental health, and Ms. Adams and her colleagues have come down to the premises and actually viewed the CCTV, and you've seen it in their report where they can see the CCTV is under the canopy and show what's happening under the canopy to deal with that. And on one instance, which is dealing with that, it wasn't a patron of our premises to deal with that. We live on a high street to deal with this. It is a busy street. Yes, there are commercial premises, but there's also management processes in place that deal with the dispersal. The extension of hours is very helpful in terms of the dispersal process, because people are going upstairs, getting their cloakroom, getting their items from the cloakroom and dispersing on a gradual basis to deal with that as they want, rather than causing the noise out the side, saying where are we going next, etc. So it's been very helpful to contain those people within the premises in the safe environment. Do you want to mention anything else?
No, not really. But, you know, what we said in the very beginning and we promised we would do, I feel we have done it and stuck to what we agreed to do. If we don't hear from the residents as they are being disturbed, whether by phone call, even the next day, we can look at it, because we look back at the CCTV, we'll see why there was an issue, who caused the issue. We have blacklisted some people when they don't adhere to, when we say to them, you know, be quiet when you're outside, when you're leaving, and if they don't. And yes, admittedly, sometimes you might get a few people that will say we don't care, which is not very pleasant, and then we blacklist them. Generally, we have a list of all our customers that come in, because it's a lot of pre-bookings for parties. So we'll contact them and say that they're not welcome again. So I feel we've done as much as possible.
Yeah, this is a question period from the applicant of the objectors. Do any of you have any questions?
I just have one bit of clarification to Councillor Gardner, which is, you say you've been written to from a number of residents, and how many of those residents, because there was a number of objectors that have written in relation to this application, were they directed by you to write their representations? Is there a overlap in terms of the residents that have written to you and the objectors to this application? Because I understood there was.
I think there's a mix. I think lots of people have copied me in on their objections. I didn't go around stirring up, if that's what you're asking. I asked when your application came in, had anybody had any issues? And that's when I got more of a flurry, yes.
The number of objectors, there's not a doubling up in terms of the residents complaining. They are more or less one and the same.
I think some of them, and some of the historic ones, were different. Those are the ones I directed elsewhere. There were even some that came in after the objection period was shut as well. So they don't appear here.
There are a couple of people that live above that have frequented the bar up to the time they put in an objection, but they would come to the bar and they'd say, it is fantastic that you're here, we've got somewhere to go that's local, we don't have to walk, we don't have to get transportation to go to a nice bar. But since we put up the notice about the hearing, they have put in an objection, although they have said to us, it is fantastic that you're here. And that's 3 people that come to the bar that since have not come to the bar because they objected.
I think you're confusing enjoyment of your premises and what you bring to the area with their sleep between 12:30 and 1:30. And and I suspect they are a bit embarrassed at the moment and probably will come back irrespective of what happens today. But I think there is a difference, and you need to differentiate between enjoying your premises during the day and during normal, sociable hours and that extra hour of when they get their sleep disturbed.
But they've never complained. When I speak to them, they never ever complain, say they've been disturbed.
And I think that's not uncommon. People don't like to complain directly to somebody, or they don't feel it's effective. And actually what they therefore do, and I think lots of people learnt from last year's hearing, that actually this committee takes evidence and facts, and as a result they've used the council noise team, or the process, as a third-party independent assessor.
We have dealt with the noise team, and we have not heard anything from the noise team for some time. So we can't, if we don't know about it, we can't solve it. We have done as much as we were asked to do. When licensing came around, we put the closers in, then we put additional softening on the actual doors, foam down it in case it was that. We've done everything we could. If we don't know there's a problem, we can't help. We don't want neighbours disturbed.
Yeah,
we don't want that to happen,
and
but
I would
we will
say
try and help.
Mail drops to Ivy Lodge are critical, because that's the way you can engage with better residents.
But they never come and tell us. They never come to the meeting.
But you're using an email.
Pardon?
You're using an email. I've walked past your premises, and I failed to see the signage from the outside. I failed to see the telephone number. You know, I've raised them before. It's a year on, nothing's changed, and so as a result, there does come that sort of element of wear down. You know, I'm not here to put you out of business. I'm just here to try and get people a bit more sleep. That's,
Yeah, I
you
understand
know,
that.
It's that
I
balance.
understand that. But the
And I'm
last
happy
time
to
we had a
work.
hearing, you issued us with email addresses of who to distribute the letters to.
Okay, we're going to move this on now because you're supposed to be asking questions. We're not having an exchange.
Sorry.
Any further questions from you? Excellent. We're going to have a 2-minute adjournment. Hello? Are we live streaming? Yes. Okay, thank you. At this stage, I'd like to ask our legal officer to deal with any draft conditions, any other queries, or any further discussion.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't draft any conditions because there's an awful lot of conditions on the existing licence, and I think it boils down to timings. So I don't know if you councillors want to just have a tentative discussion about timings. And if anybody thinks that any other conditions are relevant, then they should pipe up now.
I do, but it's not timings.
Yes. How do you feel about 12:30 instead of 1 o'clock?
I don't have, as you can tell, I don't have any instructions to amend the application to 12:30 to deal with that, and we would say in terms of the 1 o'clock, it's useful and it's helpful in terms of dispersal and keeping patrons. The last thing you'd want is someone to leave the premises at 12:30 and then go and seek entertainment elsewhere and cause additional disturbance through there. And I would ask, we're not in any cumulative impact area there, to deal with it and to look at actually the facts, because we do agree that the objections that have come in, with the exception of Mr. Tata, which has been explored, some of his complaints previously, as shown in the council inspections as not being verified, that the objections are very general, and we would say the evidence doesn't support that.
Could you put additional insulation either in the front or upstairs?
Sorry? It has all been done and verified from Environmental Health. There's been no request to put in additional insulation, depending on what it is. We're not saying we're closed to no discussion about it. Of course, Siobhan will look at discussion through that, but I don't think there's been enough evidence to say to the committee today, yes, we'll do X, Y, Z, because it obviously needs some exploration to deal with that. The acoustic report dealt with the ground floor and the first floor when it was carried out. There's no objection from Environmental Health, who are the keepers of the noise and nuisance. The noise team in RBKC are the first people to come if there's issues like this to resolve them. They have with a number of my clients, and that hasn't occurred in this situation. So I don't want to preempt and promise the members that XYZ will be done when an acoustician hasn't been in, there hasn't been testing to deal with that. I think the inspectors offered to do testing in flats, etc., but it wasn't able to be carried out because it couldn't justify the source of where the complaints were. Perhaps licensing could confirm their position on that, but I don't think I can make promises to the committee now. Certainly anything, if complaints are raised to my client, they deal with them. To deal with it, there was a possibility about the stoppers, they did it the next day. So they're not closed to not doing anything additional, but I can't say, yes, we'll do A, B, C, and I certainly don't think it warrants a condition which has criminal sanctions if it's not complied with when we don't know particularly what the issues are.
We could put a sound.
Councillor Lindsay, did you want to add something?
Sorry, I've just not to interrupt you, Councillor, I don't mean to do that, but Siobhan's just said he's very happy to participate in having a sound monitor in Mr. Tata's flat with Environmental Health, so there's no objection to that, to verify things.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay.
Not so much to do with time, but I would want a condition that every single letterbox in Ivy Lodge has notification of a forthcoming residents' meeting.
No objection, and that could be included in, there's already a residents' meeting with the 2 weeks' notice.
No
Objection to include that.
As a councillor who regularly leaflets, who also has emails, and this would apply to every single councillor in the country, irrespective of political party, emails do not always get through, leaflets do not always get through, so there needs to be maximum notification of that, and that probably also means to have a sufficiently large sign both in Ivy Lodge as well as in every single letterbox.
No objection to that.
Good point. No?
Chair, I was about to ask, it could be on the conditions, but is there a number provided by the operator where residents can call if there's issue?
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Could I just ask, would you like Mr. Tata's opinion on that 12:30 comment?
Yes. It's always helpful.
What if the license get extended to 12:15 and the closing time is still 12:30? I.e. just leaving less time for people to, because 15 minutes should be enough, especially if people are aware that this is a residential area, i.e. they need to leave quickly. Maybe actually it may even provide more impetus to clear out quicker.
Lindsay, would you comment, please?
Ultimately, the timings are for you to consider in the private discussion. I mean, the applicant's got till 12 anyway. You're suggesting another 15 minutes to 12:15, and the applicants obviously would ideally like 1 o'clock, which is what they've asked for. I think at the end of the day, this is for the councillors to go away and decide. But obviously, you've made your views clear, and you've made your views clear. So that's for you to make a decision on.
Would our legal advisor, nothing else? And our licensing officers, do you have anything to add?
Nothing, Chair.
Our governance officers, anything to add?
Nothing from us, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It's been most helpful, and thank you for coming. This is the end of the meeting. The committee now has all our information that we need, and we will retire to make our decision. And this will be done in private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing will be closed. A summary determination will be sent to the parties within 5 working days of today's hearing. And a full decision will follow as soon as possible. We understand it's the holiday season, so we'll try to get moving on that. The time limit for appealing the decision will not commence until the full decision has been sent to the parties. Thank you all for attending, and the meeting is now concluded. Thank you. Have a lovely